Hey everyone, RogueGold here, and welcome to The Division. Released back in 2016, this game remains my favorite game of all time. Of course, if you've been around the channel before, you'll know that I cover all things within the Division franchise, the Division 2, soon the Division Heartland, all of it. But it all started here, back in 2016, and nothing has quite captivated me the same way since. And so, we're now into 2023, the game's 7th birthday is coming up, that's crazy. I figured why not go back and take a look at the game and see if it's still worth playing, let alone buying, all of these years later. I'm gonna do my best to cover all aspects of the game that one might want to know, so just be aware that there are timestamps in the description below that you can use to find the most relevant section for yourself. So without further ado, this should be a lot of fun. Let's dive in. Beginning with, what exactly is The Division? Well, The Division is a third-person MMORPG looter-shooter. That's a lot of titles. At its core, it's a third-person cover-based shooter. The game has robust cover mechanics, and while there are many playstyles that involve more running and gunning tactics, cover is always available. The game has deep RPG roots, meaning you get to customize how you play and decide what your character's strengths are going to be, and that is primarily done via the game's looting and gear systems, in which every piece of gear comes with stats, talents, bonuses, etc. that you get to combine to make a personalized build, so that's the basic gist, but there's a lot more to cover from there. Something I wanted to touch on quickly before we get too far in is what kind of availability does the game currently have, and how does it perform 7 years after launch? The Division is available on both last-gen and current-gen consoles, meaning the Xbox One, PS4, and the Series X and S, and the PS5, as well as, of course, PC. These days, you could even get the game to run on the Steam Deck, so there's many ways to play. As for the performance, it's platform dependent. All of the gameplay you see captured in this video was done on an Xbox Series X, and the Xbox and PC are going to be your two best ways to experience The Division. Obviously, PC boasts all of the usual graphical enhancements and options, but the reason it runs so well on Xbox is thanks to Microsoft's FPS Boost program. Natively, the game runs at 30 FPS on all consoles, regardless of if you are next-gen or not, but thanks to Microsoft bringing the game into the program back in 2021, it runs at 60 FPS on the Xbox Series X and S without the developer ever having to do anything to it, and as you can see in the gameplay, it runs at a buttery smooth and absolutely gorgeous 4K 60 FPS. Unfortunately, PlayStation does not have the same kind of a system, so regardless of if you're on a PS4 or a PS5, you're going to be stuck at 30 FPS. Now moving on to the broader game itself, with these kinds of games, there always seems to be two main camps of people, and two different experiences that people are trying to get out of them, that being the campaign and more single-player side of things, compared to those who are looking for the robust endgame, the multiplayer experience, and all of that. And I know, especially that second one is very important when looking at a game like this in 2023 to see if there is still an endgame population of players. So don't worry, we'll get to all of that, but let's start with that first camp. If you're just looking for a fun game to play, you primarily want to play solo, run through the story, the campaign, maybe dabble a bit in the endgame and just have an enriching experience, does The Division offer you that in 2023? I think absolutely yes. Not only is the game on sale quite often, so you don't need to invest a ton for it, you can even find pre-owned copies at GameStop for like $5, but it offers you that immersive experience perhaps better than any other game in the genre, even its sequel 2019's The Division 2. The world of this apocalyptic Christmas time New York City is gorgeous and haunting, the sunrises are breathtaking and the blizzards are brutal. Massive, the developer of The Division, is known for their painstaking attention to detail, and that's on full display in this game with just how immersive everything is. So, despite the always online connection that's required, the game almost enhances your experience when playing solo because of how enthralling it all is. You feel tiny in this vast world of Manhattan, and danger lurks around every corner. So if you're seeking that campaign and solo casual experience, The Division has got you covered. From my own experience and from some light researching, running The Division from the beginning and dabbling with both main story content and some side content should run you about 30 hours. There's well over a dozen excellently crafted campaign missions to run. The story itself is hit or miss with people. Personally, I think the lore and overall concepts of the world is what's so enthralling, but the actual surface level storyline to follow along with can be a bit underwhelming at times. That said, the solo experience does not end with the campaign. The endgame offers several heavily discounted DLCs that come with fantastic game modes, the majority of which are solo friendly and tons of fun. There's more gear to collect, areas to explore. Again, if you're the type of person who enjoys these games, you're going to have no problem finding things to do. And it's important to point out that the campaign and leveling experience does not have to be played solo. The game offers up to 4-person co-op throughout your entire time in New York, and it scales all content to meet the challenge. So bottom line, with all the discounts that are out there these days, picking up The Division in 2023 with the goal of having a few dozen hours of enjoyment solo or with some friends going through the campaign is absolutely going to be worth it. I promise you, you won't regret being activated. Let's now move on to that other camp that I mentioned earlier, and that's the more endgame focused, multiplayer, hardcore kind of mindset. Does The Division support that kind of experience in 2023? Yes and no. Let's start with the actual content the game provides. With the benefit of the game being at the point at which it was updated for over 2 years with post-launch support after it released, the endgame is quite vast and well constructed. There's a customizable world difficulty you can select and progress through with world tiers. There's open world content you can do with high value targets, weekly objectives, open world bosses, and more. There's the Dark Zone, which is Division's hallmark experience in many ways. It's the highest risk, highest reward farming spot in the game because it has the threat of PvP. You've got weekly campaign missions that rotate back through with extra rewards. The majority of the main missions in the game have a selectable legendary difficulty, offering the highest PvE challenge with great loot. There's multiple different replayable game modes and other Division signature. Incursions offer 4-player cooperative modes with raid-like mechanics. I mean, there's everything you could ask for from a game in this genre, and after 1.8, which was the game's last big content update that was released, many reviewers went back, and you can go and find this on YouTube, to review the game again and concluded that it finally felt like it fulfilled the promise of the live service looter shooter, so the content you'll get for a $10 purchase, off the charts. The question though, and certainly an important one to be asking in 2023, are there any people left to play all of this content with? Let's just get this out of the way first. The game obviously does not and likely will never regain the active player counts that it had back in 2016, 17, and 18 when it was still receiving regular updates. If anyone was unaware, the developer Massive came out with The Division 2 in 2019, and that game is the one that still currently receives post-launch support and updates to this day. The Division's last real update was back in 2018 as they were ramping up for The Division 2's release, so clearly the game doesn't have thousands upon thousands of people playing at all times of the day. That said, that also does not mean that there isn't a player base and an active community for the game, because there absolutely is. Need I say or show more than me logging onto the game and seeing how many people are here roaming around the base of operations? There's still a lot of people playing. There has always remained, throughout these 7 years, a very passionate and dedicated fanfare for this game, and that's apparent on any platform you play on. And just because the developer isn't releasing new updates or content, that doesn't mean there aren't active events happening to enrich the experience. For one, Massive still runs a schedule of global events for the game, which are, from back in the day, a premier endgame event that nets you some of the most powerful gear in the game. They recently released their first half 2023 calendar for those, which I'll put up on screen. Additionally, there are a number of community events that happen on a weekly basis, two in particular that I've been involved with before. My buddy Splinter Shield hosts Survival Sundays, which aim to populate arguably the franchise's most popular and successful game mode of all time across either game, Survival. A number of people, including Kongstyle and Dr. Luke, both friends of mine, collaboratively promote and host Throwback Thursdays, in which we all hop into Last Stand, which is my all-time favorite game mode. And I'll link everybody's info below so you can look more into them if you're curious. But point is, there's still a lot happening with a 7-year-old game. Now, of course, some of that stuff is platform dependent, more accessible by certain time zones, etc. But across the board, regardless of where or when you play, there are still people playing this game. Nearly every time I go into the Dark Zone, which as I mentioned is a big PvE farming spot in the game, there's always people there. You go to the TAC Ops Center, which is the hub for the underground game mode, another popular endgame PvE mode. There's always people in there. Regardless of how or what you want to play in the Division's endgame, you'll be able to find some group or community that supports it. Again, it won't be as consistent as a currently updated game, as consistent as something more recent, but if you want to sink your teeth into something new, or if you're wondering if you should come back to the game all these years later, the Division's community and passion has not died down in the slightest. If anything, its popularity has risen in the past year or two, primarily because I know a lot of people personally who moved away from the Division 2 and have gone back to the original. And there's good reason for it. It's a great game. So, to summarize, is it worth buying and or playing the Division in 2023? In my opinion, yes. Keep in mind that comes with a degree of bias. As I said before, this is my favorite game of all time, but seriously, for the extremely low prices you can find the game for these days, you're going to get a ton of enjoyment and entertainment for your money. I would give a lot to be able to go back and experience the Division for the first time again. From the stellar atmosphere to the rock-solid gameplay the Massive created, the wealth of in-game content available, I mean, if you're already a fan of third-person shooters or looter shooters and you haven't played this before, I think you're going to fall in love with this game. And if you have played before and you're thinking of coming back, there's a lot of people in your same position who have come back, and likely the things that you're wanting to do, whether it be the DZ or certain game modes, they're populated. There's people to play with, and you're going to get just as enjoyable of an experience as you did all of those years ago. Thank you all so much for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and be sure to subscribe with notifications on so you can be updated every time I upload. Let me know your thoughts on The Division, everyone. If you're somebody who still plays the game with any regularity, I would love to hear your assessment on the game in 2023. And if you're looking to buy or get back into the game and have additional questions, ask away and I will answer to the best of my knowledge. As I've said ad nauseum at this point, this is my favorite game of all time. It's always going to have a special place in my heart, and even if it's just one person that I convinced to try it out for the first time, then that's a huge win in my book. That's going to do it for me today, though, everyone. Once again, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and until the next one, guys, RogueGold out.